Rachel, do you remember the first song you ever heard?
First song? Nope.
You don't remember? Okay. How was music introduced to your life?
When I was, I don't really remember, but from what I was hearing when I had retinopathy of prematurity, with becoming blind, and music was like the thing that my parents played. That was the first language that was easy for me. Yes.
Right. Do you remember one of the first songs that you heard where you just kind of just felt it was speaking to you? You just really felt alive?
Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven.
Okay.
For Release was another one.
Do you remember how old you were?
Nope.
Okay.
Probably like 2.
Oh, wow.
3, 4, somewhere around there.
Wow, okay.
And then my mom and dad's own compositions.
Right. Yeah. Your mom, Jennifer, has an absolutely beautiful voice as well, so
Yeah.
it's in the film. So, Lorenzo, I understand that you met Rachel at a local jazz club, which is Squash Grapes. I love the name, by the way. And it's in Ventura.
It is.
Do you want to talk about that night? Because I think you went in not intending to do a film.
No, yeah. Well, a mutual friend of ours, Hans Ottsen, a guitarist in Ventura, Rachel was in his group at the time. And he's a friend, and he said she'd come down and check out this group, including this young woman she was 20 at the time. And so I went down with a friend of mine, and wow, it was kind of a revelation. The group was tight, and Rachel was just astonishing, and met Jeannie. Found out later, well, I had made a couple of music films and lost sufficient money on those. So I wasn't looking to do another, But something clicked, because they were right there locally. It was close by. So they checked me out, and I checked them out, and a couple of months later we were filming, and then we filmed for 53 days over almost a 2-year period. So we ended up grew, from a small thing into sort of a big story, even though it's modest and family and all. It took on a dimension that we didn't really know was going to go that way.
What was that conversation like? Who approached whom to say, I'd like to make this documentary, and how do you feel about me being a part of your life, basically almost forever, because the film lives on, and even if the two of you never see each other again, you still are around in a sense, in your mind.
I'm sure they felt it was forever, Well, I think, they looked at I gave them a couple of films of mine, musical related. Yeah, a Cuban music film and a film about
Farlow, who's a guitar player.
Yeah, a jazz guitar player. You'd heard of him before? Or that was the first time you heard of him?
First time I've heard of him.
Yeah, one of my first films. And
pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think there was an element of trust, like this guy kind of knows what he's doing, And there, in terms of my, I went to the house for the first time, and Jeannie said, "Let me clean up first."
Showed him some recent compositions I've been writing on my computer keyboard at the time, and
yeah, it was the beginning of what's been just, I can't even count how many times we've hung out there, and came
Still
close.
do.
It's documentaries can be that way. Usually a feature film, people don't speak to each other after the thing is over. This is these tensions. But I've been lucky that way. All the films I've done, it's become long-term relationships, and I see no reason this won't be the same, if not even longer. But that was the beginning. Some filmmakers had approached you, right?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And they didn't follow up, and I think, understandably.
I was busy with high school and a lot of other things, and I hadn't really explored things yet.
Yeah, it's kind of a natural, story. It didn't take a whole lot of brain power to see there was a story here. I think probably one of the best decisions I made was just, let's do this, And I contacted some crew, camera people that I know, and it wasn't a hard sell. It's been easy all along the way in terms of once they check out some of Rachel's work and they're in,
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's you know, the main reason people got on board this in terms of funding and all the other things. And it's unlike any other experience I've had, you know, the kind of support.
Maybe that's why it just felt right. It just was easy. You know how when things seem difficult, it's almost like maybe that's a sign to not do them. So it sounds like that was a sign if other filmmakers had approached and it kind of fell off. So, but where were you in your life at the time, Lorenzo? Weren't you working and you had to maybe scale back some of your work because, you know, this is a huge commitment?
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was going to be, but, you know, well, I was, you know, writer-director, developing material and playwright and, you know, working in those realms. I was a film editor for many years, so I came out of film editing. And which was helpful in terms of, has been helpful in terms of writing, in terms of story and economy and approach and things like that. But documentary, you just go out and just suck up material, you know, and photograph it properly, record the sound right, make your choices, you know. Since I produced and directed it, the producer part was actually more important than the directing, because in a documentary, you're not telling people stuff to do. Maybe say walk over here or something. It was very minimal directing. The producing is choosing what sequences to show, what not to shoot, and the director comes in, and if it's the same person, you just try not to screw it up. You know, you shoot it properly, record it properly, and being an editor, I kind of know what I need, you know, to get in order to be able to put it together. But yeah, and it just flowed. You know, 53 days is a long time over that period of time. And we staged certain sequences that maybe wouldn't have happened, you know. And then most of it, though, was just, what are you doing today? Can we tag along? So it was kind of a mix of those two techniques, I guess you'd call them.
Right. And how was it for you to hear Rachel, your brother Vaughn, talk in the film? I mean, he was, you know, he had a fun way about him, but he just said, you know, he's an artist too.
Yeah.
And I found that interesting that you were willing to have him sort of say that. I'm sure a lot of people feel that in families, and just forgive me if it's too personal, but I was just wondering how that was for you. Yeah. To hear that.
I remember a while ago when I was becoming known playing at a lot of recitals and musical competitions and recitals, and Mom would always take Vaughn to go to them, and he would always hear me being like the, you know, recognized a lot, and Vaughn was starting to get a little uncomfortable with that, and yeah, so when he started getting into drawing, I was like, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I felt that too. So.
Well, you come from a very creative family, and you can see that in many respects. There's always something creative going on. I'm wondering how you'll feel about now. The film will be out coming up in just a few weeks, or maybe even less than that. And now the reach will be even broader. People will know even more about your story, your music, your family. How does that feel? Is that exciting? Is it a little scary?
Pretty exciting. I think it'll be fascinating for a lot of people, sort of see like how I got started with playing music, and the family side of it is pretty cool that Mom and Dad were part of it too, because they helped me a lot when I was very little too. So yeah.
Right. And when Lorenzo played the film for you, were you involved in different, did you know it from the beginning? Were you hearing sort of the playback of some of the scenes, or was it fresh? Did you keep it sort of from Rachel until it was ready to be out there in the world?
Well, she saw a lot of cuts. She goes to all the screenings. I don't think she's gotten bored with it yet.
No.
Oh. And how was it to hear yourself and your life? Did it almost feel like it was another person? Or did you kind of say, this is me, I get it?
But at the time when I hear myself talk, it's like, yeah, that was me. Sometimes it's funny hearing my own voice when I play it, when it plays back.
It's, you know, she's got such an ear, you know, that we had to edit a lot of the songs just for length, you know, and we were sweating bullets in there. She's going to hear every cut, you know. And so when so that was pretty good. Then you know you're okay, you know. But it was, you know, obviously I made the film I wanted to make, and they were so cooperative, you know, all the way down the line. I don't know if I'll ever get that kind of, you know, cooperation, because that shows on film that they're willing participants, you know, in the thing. But yeah, it's a revelation for everybody on the crew, you know, to be, and it's right down the street. You know, if there's a message, quote unquote, on the film, it's pay attention to the world around you, because they're fascinating people, including yourself. In other words, people are, you know, sort of pushed into different roles in life.
Societal.
You know? Yeah, like you're this, you're that.
Right. Yeah.
But and, you know, Rachel's defied all the odds pretty much.
Absolutely.
And music being her vehicle, you know. So, yeah, we learned a lot from her.
It was fun.
Still learning. Yeah.
Yep.
And I love how you show the Dweezil Zappa performance in Vegas. That's awesome.
That was my favorite moment.
That's really cool.
First time we played on stage together too, so.
Oh wow, okay.
I had these dreams before that. I remember this dream that I was playing with Dweezil in his band, and that guitar that I played, something weird happened to the guitar, and then one of my friends helped out, fixed the guitar, and got it set back up. And then later on, something weird happened with my guitar, like in the dream. So then we figured that out. And then playing with Dweezil, we played a different song, but it was pretty cool.
He'd heard of her through friends, right?
I did a lot of Frank Zappa tunes on SoundCloud.
Oh wow.
And Dweezil heard them, and he was impressed, and he talked about doing some songs together, and I was like, yeah, that would be cool. So the Vegas thing was pretty exciting.
I know you talk about dreams as well in other parts of the film. It sounds like that's a very strong force in your life.
Yeah.
Dreams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in dreams I'm always hearing some kind of music, or I remember a lot of I even remember a whole bunch of dreams when I was very little that I had.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The
sounds, the smells, the places, the people, the environment in them. Yes.
What do the two of you feel about the law of attraction? I'm wondering if that's somehow...
Between us?
Well, you know, I mean, it was the right time. If you say, Rachel, that other filmmakers had approached you and maybe either they didn't follow up or it just wasn't right. And it sounds like this, I don't know, if you wanted to look at a higher part of how this film came together, law of attraction. I don't know if either of you have thoughts.
Well, it certainly was attractive, you know, in terms of, I think there's a certain cosmic thing going on, you know, in the creative realms that leads you, not always in the right directions. You know, I've had a few detours, as everyone has, in terms of pursuing things you think are great, and the world is yawning. You know, it's like, I don't think so. And this has been 3.5 years, and so I figured it was a 4-year. Having done these before, I figured it's a 4-year thing.
4 years.
For full,
like
from conception to full release. And so we're about 6 months ahead of schedule.
Oh.
It's been 3.5 since January 18th, 2014, which is the day we met.
Where we started.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
I started filming in April that year.
April.
So, and then just, you know, kept going. I don't know, you felt it was okay too? It was a decent guy enough to trust me with your story? Huh? She didn't really know at first, you know, but she was a great trooper, you know. I mean, I know it was exhausting sometimes. Huh?
Yeah.
And it's not always exciting, you know. Especially when I asked her to play a song 40 times.
Oh, yeah.
She got mad at me a couple times. She didn't quite get why. I probably overdid it too a few times. I just liked the song. I just play it again. But I think it was, you have to answer for yourself about what the process was like. You want to talk a little bit about
Yeah, it was pretty interesting, like getting all the mics set up and the cameras and filming strange things. like going into the pumpkin fields, and this like small thing in this giant, I don't know what it is.
Well, yeah, it wasn't just performance. In fact, my other films in this realm have been kind of tagged music films. I know this is still going to be called that, but I really worked hard to make it more than that. A family piece. And we wanted to take Rachel into places where blind people don't go, like by themselves in the middle of a field. Of course, we took her out there, and then
Sure.
we left this in the frame.
Right.
But I wanted that feeling of independence. It's
Yeah.
a symbolic image, and with the drone cameras pulling back, and she's
It's
by
beautiful.
herself.
Yeah.
And so it's a little unrealistic in that sense, but it's more
Wild.
a sort of euphemism for freedom and
Yeah.
no boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I get from Rachel.
Yeah.
Right, but then also too, structure. I think you had talked about on the Indiegogo page, and I have it here. It says, with a documentary, there's structure, and you always need to go back to the house, to the family. And I'm
Yeah.
just wondering.
That's where it all starts.
Okay, yeah.
And that's also, that's like where I'm at after I'm done doing something. I'm always back at the house and going on my keyboards and composing or playing a song or whatever.
These increasingly impressive forays into the world, starting in the sequence in church where she sings Expecting.
Early mini rippers and way before Loving You.
Yeah.
That's like the song that everybody knows at first, but I like going further and exploring the
Lesser
other
known things.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the house. I mean, it's a conscious effort to.
Sure.
Hopefully it's subtle on film. People, the audience, if they're with you, will go with you
Yeah.
wherever you take them. And if it's an off, they know when they're not in it. And
They're
it's
like,
not
"What?"
working for them. And so you're not making it for them. It's manipulative in that sense, but it's mostly your abilities as an editor. Or, when you're cutting for a year, it's hard to be objective anymore, so you show it to people and so on. But that was a pretty early decision, was to come back and forth. And then culminating, the Dweezil Zappa stuff was not at the end at one point.
Oh, interesting.
And some people wiser than I said, you should put that at the end, and it was obviously good advice.
Yeah.
So you grew with her.
Yeah.
And when you film that long shoot, her look changes, her hair length, and she starts off as a young girl into a young woman. That's the sort of natural trajectory. Try not to get in the way of the material.
Yeah.
Rachel, what do you want people to take away from the film? Anything?
It's been a while since I last watched it.
Well, they may have heard of you. Some may never have heard of you.
Yeah.
It's hard to put yourself in their place, but they're pretty interesting for them to see
Yeah.
how you're progressing over the years.
Yeah. The part about something about moving forward. It's
Always, huh?
exploring all kinds of things. I know what I would like to say, but I can't get the words out
Yeah, take your
correctly.
time.
Yeah.
Well, she's thinking about it. I'll say that, there's also things like it's a disability film, which it's not, That word is banished, we don't use that word. If anything, she's a hyper-able individual, with a huge talents,
Absolutely.
But people will get what they want out of it, and some people that might be very productive, We had the film that's been audio described for the blind and vision impaired. It's a narration track that in certain theaters, and in fact the New York theater has that capacity, Cinema
Pretty
Village.
cool.
And iTunes and Netflix, whoever ends up buying the film, will have some of those platforms
Descriptive
have
audio.
that. So it opens it up for people like Rachel who need that. Because you watch a lot of movies, right?
Now, in a black sky, a sliver of sunlight crosses the earth. Rays of light shoot up, and the words "universal" appears.
That's great.
Now, a young man sits at a piano.
Young man, young woman.
Well, it could be any.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's
sure.
the kind of narration it is. Yeah.
Interesting.
And it paints pictures.
Yeah.
It's very brief because it has to fit in between dialogue in the movie.
A
It's kind of
tear
an art.
rolls
isn't
down
it?
his face.
Say again.
A tear rolls down his face.
What advice would you have, Rachel, for other people that are having a film made about them? Maybe they feel like, okay, this is just daily life for me, even though the rest of the world is intrigued. But what advice would you have? I mean, I'm sure at times it might have been uncomfortable, but other times it was probably very exciting
Yeah.
and flattering, and then also maybe a little scary because you're like, all these people are going to know, but there's probably a fun part of that too. But any advice?
Mixture of both.
Be yourself, right?
Yeah. Just like be like yourself, personality, and I guess.
I think most people don't see themselves as interesting. You know?
Sure.
I mean, here in LA, everybody thinks they're interesting. They're selling
Ventura is a totally
themselves
different world, yeah.
all over the place. That's one thing that's impressive, that there's someone who is not motivated by that at all.
Right.
I would listen to a lot of like documentaries on like very famous people who did a lot of strange things, sort of not really being themselves at the end, and I guess, and so I always like thinking of me and just like my personality, and I guess I can't figure out exactly what the words, but like
Natural.
learning from those and just being natural, and also my family too, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Rachel's grandfather and grandmother in the film, who were musicians, and her grandfather died in the 2014, and
Yeah.
that made the film even more important, I think, to you guys.
Yeah.
That he was in it, you know.
Yeah, we always had nice times together too. Like, he played me a lot of stuff with grandma, like a lot of Western swing music when I was very little. Sometimes he would be singing stuff to me, and I have these dreams where, like, recently I would have these dreams where like he would just be singing and just really happy.
Keith Emerson,
Yeah, Keith
isn't
Emerson.
it? And
Yeah, that was
amazing.
that was the toughest for me because I saw him 2 months ago before he died. He was very influential in adapting classical music and taking that into a rock band, a keyboard-based band, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, then earlier with The Nice back in the late 1960s. But he was also a really, really cool composer. And that he would take sort of the structure elements of classical music and jazz and all kinds of stuff, and so that was very influential. And I was lucky to have met both Keith Emerson and Greg Lake. They were both very nice people, and I stayed in touch with Greg after Keith died and wrote to him, and we just had a nice time, you know. And then he's gone, and so I was lucky to know both Keith and Greg. They helped me a lot in finding your own path, like keep exploring things, and then you finally figure out what it is that you enjoy the most and keep doing it, kind of a thing, I guess. So.
Yeah, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, they don't make music like that as much anymore. It's absolutely brilliant, and
Yeah.
I didn't know much about. I mean, you know, most of those fans are, you know, older guys, and,
Sure.
and kind of bypassed me. But
And my YouTube videos, a lot of my YouTube fans will know me as the girl who, I guess, brought Keith Emerson music back too, I guess. You know, because
she's the queen of Prague.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the comments, and people were saying,
Yeah.
I tried in 1975 to play this, and I couldn't. I can't believe how effortless it looks from her. So
I'm always studying a whole bunch of renditions, the live versions, the studio versions, the different takes, or the different, yeah. So it's pretty cool with technology now. I could listen to one part of a song, listen to it. How did he play that live? Okay, he probably changed this up a little bit here, and he did this there, and
It's a scientist over here. Really, you know, if music is, this guy's doing his trash thing. Music is a science, it's a language, you know.
Yeah.
And she has a master's degree in that. Self-taught. I mean, she went to school, right?
yeah, I went to the conservatory in you know,
From the age of what?
4, and that was pretty good for studying classical music. A lot of times the stuff that I enjoyed doing was I just liked listening to the classical music, and then going to a computer class and learning on music technology. But later on, once I started teaching myself how to go online in high school and how to go on the internet and look up stuff, and I started exploring lots of cool stuff. It's like, and then having some friends too. So it's a mixture of my family and then my friends, and then just a lot of stuff. Yeah.
18 hours a day, you know. I've seen her fall asleep playing a chord and wake up playing the same chord.
oh,
Yeah.
It's weird. She's very weird. In a natural way. That's someone who's living it, you know.
sure.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting too when you said earlier, Lorenzo, about how being in LA and everybody thinks their story is special, and that's true. That's partly why everybody comes to Los Angeles in some sense. But you know, I'm sure from doing interviews and documentaries, you've probably had to ask people to tone back, you know, when the camera turns on and they get into actor mode. And I felt that very refreshing about the film too, that it was very natural, and I didn't feel that, you know, and I'm sure you've seen that in other.
I've not encountered that. I mean, I guess it's the choice of the, you know, I don't really think about the thematics, you know, why you make a film or write a story or something. I mean, in my case, I guess it's something to do with discovering the undiscovered, you know, people that could easily be in this frenzy of stardom and fame seeking. The people who get ahead are usually the people who try the hardest, you know, you know, whether it's a reality TV, you know, I'm special, or a sex change operation, whatever it takes, you know.
Sure.
People will do anything, you know, to lift themselves out of anonymity. And then the people that are famous want anonymity back, and they can't get it. It's this push-pull thing.
Right.
But yeah, none of the subjects I've done, whether it be Tal Farlow or this group Los Zafiros from Cuba, none of them were showboaters. In performance they were, but in life they weren't. And so Rachel's in that family of people who are extremely talented, who they know it, but they're not selling themselves.
I'm the best player in the world.
But other people can say that if they want to, but
Yeah.
when you start saying it,
But I'm not like that. I'm like, yeah, I could do that stuff, but I'm also, you know,
well, you listen to a lot of other people too, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and copy them.
Study.
Yeah, study. It's a scholarship, really.
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain, I think, was quoted as saying, or I remember I heard an interview from the 90s where he said he wishes that he could just be in a band for 2 years until it blows up and then jump out and do something else, because he loved the process of building it up. But the fame part, like
The
you're right,
fame part.
he wanted some of
Yeah.
the pureness back. So I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
I was reading about that too. That's so what I'm getting into a phase right now and exploring all these different styles and some of his music here and there. And yeah.
Oh,
There
so
are a
you
lot of
just read
Amy
that. That's
Winehouse
interesting.
songs and
Right.
amazing stuff. If you see here, you should go to her SoundCloud channel. It's like a unbelievable diversity. of
Covers
things.
collection. Some Frank Zappa, some Prince, King Crimson, Beatles,
Mhm.
like all kinds of stuff.
Cream. Yeah.
Cream, Clapton,
Deep Purple, all these great bands.
George Harrison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish the music still played on the radio as much as it.
99.9 K-Tide.
I get that occasionally. If the sun is right, it will come in all the way in LA, but
Yeah.
it's in and out. So
I
yeah.
get that station at home, so
Very nice.
I love that station.
I like
Rachel
it.
has a device called a Victor Reader, which holds SD cards, and she keeps a lot of different cards for different. You want to tell me?
Categorize the genres. So like one card, I put all my, I guess like classic rock collection from the stuff in the 1970s and all that, and then I put another. I put all this. I do a copy and paste of stuff from the computer. So like if I have like all the alternative collection of like all those different bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. That's another one.
Yeah, Chris Cornell.
Chris Cornell.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
sad, but
I know.
beautiful voice,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
beautiful spirit.
Yeah. Very huge range too. Vocal range.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they explored a lot of time signatures too. So not just 4/4, but they would go into like 5 and I guess like 7, and it's like, wow, this is cool.
Not
Yeah.
your standard rock band
No.
stuff, yeah.
But you would often associate it with like progressive rock and time signatures, but they incorporated that into it. It's so cool. So I like to think of those elements, and my main favorite in composition would be jazz and classical, but I like incorporating the structure of classical music, but also with jazz harmonies and improvisation. The closest would be like the stuff by Pat Metheny, Lyle Mays, and then Taylor Ikesty, who is in the film. He's one of my influences too, current pianist, and so I'm always categorizing things. So like one is like my contemporary collection, and then I got one that's just my jazz instrumental stuff, and this card is more of the vocal side of the jazz vocalists, and then this one is going to be like gospel collection, and then this is sort of like my classical collection. So, and then I'm always putting it in a specific spot so that way I know exactly where it is. So it's a lot of fun having this technology to explore these things and listen to them and share it with them too. So
You want to make Rachel crazy, hide her Victor Reader. She'll be all depressed until she gets it back.
where's my machine?
Where's my machine?
Was there one moment in the film that was difficult, whether it was just the location or whatever it was that was maybe the most trying, but then it turned out to be actually one of the better moments?
I don't remember now. There was a whole bunch of stuff that we did.
Difficult? No, not technically difficult. I think some of the interviews I learned a lot early on asking, I mean, in your role as an interviewer, because Rachel's not, she's a realist, if her music is coming from, as she says, a sense of place, a feeling, a sound, a smell, who she's with, like compositions like At the Beach, Ordinary Day, the titles, Shoreline, the titles indicate the genesis of this piece is from an actual experience, not some intellectual thing. So the early interviews where she'd just stare at me like, what are you asking me this for? Like, where does the music come from? Some people can answer that, but it's kind of an odd question,
Yeah.
So I got better at it, by trying to just steer it towards it more. So I wouldn't say those were difficult, because Rachel was never resisting anything. But I had to learn her language, her process. Yeah, took a little bit.
It reminds me of Keith Richards, his
Stones.
Yeah, his book Life, I think it was, where he talked about these people would go to these jazz clubs and they would theorize, but they had never picked up an instrument, and it would make him mad, because he maybe didn't know so much about the theory, but he knew how to play.
How to play the guitar.
Yeah.
This reminds
Well,
me
being
of
a failed musician myself, I think I
Really?
came at it Yeah, dismal, terrible. Rachel points that out to me.
But what would you play? Sorry, what would you?
Well, what I didn't play was jazz guitar, which is of course the hardest type to play.
It's tricky.
But that's how I met Tal Farlow, who I later made a film about. So I kind of worked it out for myself. It steered me towards film, which was better for me.
It's pretty cool.
But yeah, so music is still sort of a mystery to me in a lot of ways. But I know it enough to edit it and work with it and know what sounds right and what doesn't sound right. But I leave it to people like Rachel to do it. But you have to have some abilities, as an editor, to read this stuff, because you give the scene to 4 different people and it comes out differently with each person, in terms of the sensitivity to what's going on.
I like the echo in here.
Yeah, it's very high ceilings. You had a Indiegogo campaign, is that right? Did most of the backers know you or Rachel or Jeannie? Or?
I don't know. Mostly they knew her.
Okay.
And it was our first campaign we did in 2014.
Right.
And we did well with it. It was just exploratory, to see if anyone cared. And so when it's all said and done, there's almost 200 credits on the movie. I don't know if you saw a version with the credits, but it's like 4-minute credit sequence, which is like a big movie. Just to thank everyone who helped out. From $10 people, they all got their names on the film, and
wow.
So it's astonishing. Like I said, never before had I had that kind of pre-support for something, and it wasn't me. I mean, a few people, but mostly it was people who'd been following Rachel for years. Said, "Oh, there's going to be a movie about her. Wow. I'll help with that."
Yeah.
And so yeah,
pretty cool.
It was cool. And then we did another one a few years later, but mostly it was. Our executive producer, Patty Channer, and several others who came in big, to support it over a long period of time, and gave me the assurance that it'll be taken care of, And I'm a good negotiator, so I'm not spending other people's money unwisely.
Sure.
But it was a pleasure, to know that, we're actually going to release this now. That's where the film was not that expensive, considering what other feature documentaries cost. But the marketing, when you go to the theaters and all this, it does cost you music rights and things like that.
Rights,
sure.
There's a lot of music in the film.
Yeah. How is that to secure those rights?
Well, it's expensive, I mean, they don't care if it's a small film. They don't care if it's Rachel Flowers. It's just, but we have clearance people in San Francisco who I'd worked with before. And they're very good, the Rights Workshop. And they go after it, And they deal with these publishers all the time. So they say, hey, give these guys a break, or, But you do have to pay, and you have to be diligent about that. I've never had any bad experiences, slid by on a few titles. I won't mention the names.
Yeah, let's not.
But this was fully cleared, and a lot of work, over many months. But we are in a good place now, so.
Well, Lorenzo, I know you used to live in Los Angeles and be in the film industry here, and then I guess you would drive up to Ventura on the weekends for a while?
Yeah, quite a bit, yeah.
So do you miss Los Angeles? Do you miss the film industry? Or do you feel that there's a home that embraces you in Ventura? It seems like they're quite supportive of you.
Well, there's careers change, times change, I did my time in that sense, and I did okay, I did well. Coming from Hawaii with no connections, no experience, I wanted to be a film editor. I saw Cabaret 14 times, and it was really the first movie that was conscious of the craft of editing as a storytelling tool, And later got to meet, David Bretherton, who won an Oscar for that film as an editor, and ended up working with a couple of Oscar-winning editors,
Wow.
In those days I was an apprentice and then a second assistant, an assistant, the older hierarchical days, you know, then you became an editor, you know.
You paid your dues.
Yeah, my first film was Girls Just Want to Have Fun, you know.
Oh, great,
It was
okay.
a feature, you know.
I had fingerless gloves.
Yeah,
I remember, yeah.
but it was, you know, and then you know, I got fed up with LA, and I moved to Canada and lived on an island with my dog, and
Oh, wow.
and then I was
Sounds nice.
involved with John Hurt, the late lovely John Hurt, in a feature called Hypergraphia that I had wrote, and he was going to star in, and we spent 6 years collaborating on that. So that brought me back down here because I needed to be a little closer to the business. But you know, LA will either, you know, like New York, you know, embrace you or ignore you, you know, and you still have to be yourself. And so, yeah, we've come down a lot. It's nice to be only an hour away, but I don't want to I leave it to others to be here every day, you know.
Sure. Well, we have a lot of new filmmakers that watch our channel, and they want to make a living as a filmmaker. So, you know, you've been in this business for a few years. What advice could you share to them about making a living as a filmmaker? Is it in the editing? Is it in post-production, or maybe production? But in terms of actually trying to make a movie just to make money and make a living, it's more about the idea behind it and how passionate you are. Maybe not.
Yeah, well, I never did any films myself for that reason, you know, to make a hit or, you know, or supply a genre piece, you know, a horror movie or something. People do that, you know, and some succeed with that. I found that seldom do they be able to escape, though, the thing that they started, in other words, to become a genre filmmaker. There's so many filmmakers now, it's amazing, you know, every year there's people graduating from film school, and I think it's harder in a way now to distinguish yourself, even though there's digital technology. And at the Film Society in Ventura, we used to bring in film students from Brooks Institute, which is no longer there, but they were shocked to show their shorts and stuff in front of an audience, because they usually just put it on YouTube and they go by the comments, which is sort of separate from, but to sit in the room in the dark with people, they were very moved by that, and they had no experience. There was, you know, a degree of separation from the audience. So I don't know, in terms of making a living, that's a mystery, you know. I had a craft that I could sell and get paid for to do the editing, and I got on a TV series at Warner Brothers called Life Goes On, in the late 80s, and transitioned me from an editor to a producer, and I directed for them too, got in the Directors Guild, and so that was my path, you know. But a craft is a good thing, you know, whether it's camera or editing, and then I just always would work on the side, writing and so on, you know. I was trying to kind of ask at least as much of myself as my employers asked of me, which means a long day, you know. You come home from a 12-hour day and you rest and you do your own thing, whether it's writing or editing or whatever. You have to be pretty resilient, you know, and diligent about it. And not be like somebody else. It's you know, who you are. Find out who you are, and then that hopefully translates into something others will find interesting too, you know.
You started the Ventura Film Society. I know you said they've taken a hiatus, or it's closed down for a little bit. But when you did start it, what were some of the issues that other filmmakers would throw out, or maybe not issues, but just concerns or things they were working through?
People that we had up there as guests. Yeah, well, they pretty much enjoyed, you know, the process. We had Paul Mazursky up, who was an old friend of mine, and Bob Young and Andy Timiner, and they all came up to do things with us. They were working on their own projects. We sometimes got into that, talking with them. But, you know, as Paul Mazursky, the late Paul Mazursky says, he says, I know I'm close to dying because I'm getting all these tributes now, you know. It must be getting close, you know.
Oh, gosh.
He was a great guy. And so that was just you know, having been in a lot of festivals, good, bad, and indifferent, you know, festivals, we wanted to honor the process and bring to a small town, was our slogan, bringing people together in the dark.
Oh, I like that.
And that's really what cinema is about, you know, the theater experience. And that was, or discover the world around you. These are the kind of things we came up with, and the programming followed those leads, odd things, Some went over better than others,
So Lorenzo, from your successful Indiegogo campaign in 2014, you said something that was great. It was making a film about someone's life, even for a short period of time, is not something to enter into lightly for the filmmaker or the subject. It's a bond that holds people for a very long time before fruition and a lifetime afterwards. So,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
that's beautifully written.
Kind of true, don't you think, Rach? In terms of the relationship between a filmmaker and a subject,
Mm-hmm.
It's you don't quite know where it's going to go or if it's going to work. And
Yeah, I lost concentration there. So.
that's okay.
Okay.
But yeah, it's true. I mean, if you care about people, and again, this idea of reaching into the shadows and illuminating stories for people. You didn't invent the story was there already. But you're kind of the guide, And in this case, the piece is hopefully going to resonate with people. Judging by the festival response, it will. Everything's guaranteed, but when they have to buy a ticket, like they did at the festivals, and like they will now coming up, you kind of get a sense that it's working. The film is something separate from us now. It's a separate entity, and it goes out and does its thing. And it doesn't bore people. It's it's been pretty universally liked, and that's a good thing, I think. Must have done something right, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think so, yeah. And bringing people together in the dark, would you rather them see it in a theater versus at home?
Always, sure, yeah. But whatever. I mean, Gravitas Ventures is the distributor, is a digital distributor. They do theatricals. We kept the theatrical for ourselves on this one. We formed a company called Foresight Releasing, which is doing the theatrical release. And whatever, I mean, visual quality is different, I think if people are watching it on the bus, on their phone, okay, that's cool, whatever. I'm not going to take it away from them. It's whatever fits, and that's what's great about this platforms that exist now.
Yeah.
It's digital delivery. And the more people, like I think Rachel is motivated by sharing what she does, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thrill of having them appreciate it,
Mm-hmm.
I love the moment where you were, I think, outside the Braille Institute, and you were singing a Pharrell song.
Yeah, with my friend Eric.
Oh, yeah, that was really cool.
That was fun.
I like that.
That song cost us, believe me.
Oh, I'm sure it did. that's the filmmaker talking there.
30 seconds cost how much?
That's great.
But it had to be in.
It was excellent.
That's one of my favorite songs too. So.
And then we cut away to Rachel's being happy, just like what the song says.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
That was fun.
That's interesting. So from a filmmaking sort of money perspective, you realized that was a scene that needed to be there, and
yeah, it got cut at one time because we had right before that was Superwoman.
Stevie Wonder.
Oh. And you don't think about a feature film where you're doing a dance number like La La Land or something. You got to own that music from early on because you're going to shoot to it. And if you didn't clear it, you have to reshoot or fake it or something. Yeah. The documentary is a little less stringent, but it comes to haunt you at some point. That's the cut. Oh my God, we had to clear 19 songs.
Yeah. I still remember the first time I heard that song. I was actually I was asleep and I had some weird dream, and I turned on the radio and I was looking for a good station, and that song came. I was like, wow, I like this. This is cool.
You're talking about Happy?
Yeah.
Was it K-Tide or no?
No.
K-Tide's
that's classic. That's like rock. But I was probably either Live 105.5 or B95.1 or somewhere in those the day's hits station.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But it's Eric
cool.
is a guy at the Braille Institute. He's vision impaired.
I don't know where he is now, but
He lives in Santa Barbara with his brother, doesn't he?
yeah. I mean,
But very talented. You saw him with his. That's something
his
Rachel
fingers.
can't do.
I can't snap my fingers.
Thank God there's one thing. She's hopeless at that. Well, yeah, that's one thing you can't do. But he's got great time and a nice voice too. And he really cares for Rachel. So that was just, you don't plan these things like, oh, and then you turn the camera over there, something's happening over there.
Right.
It just comes at you, and you better be, that's the directing job, to get back to that, is just don't
being at the moment.
Don't blow it.
Multiple cameers.
Things happen right at the moment, spontaneously.
Yeah, and if you say do it again, it's never the same.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
You blew it. If you lost, it's your fault.
The energy and...
I think having been a photographer, story about Ansel Adams, the great landscape photographer, would travel to Yosemite, Half Dome. He took some great pictures out there, and he shot you with a giant view camera, maybe an 11 by 14 negative. It's so crisp, beautiful. And he'd take one sheet of film, just one, and drive for days. And he had a processing in his trunk, and he would take one piece of film, and it was a discipline. This is amazing. And he'd then drive all the way back, print it, and it didn't work or whatever. He'd just take one more sheet back. It wasn't like digital where you're just firing off.
Yeah.
I thought that was an amazing story of a disciplined eye,
Yeah.
I always try to use that as an inspiration for the moment. If you blow it, it's your fault,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now it seems like because of digital cameras, it's just keep clicking, just keep going until you find one.
The world is different too. The Half Dome's not going anywhere. It's there, that big rock, and the light changes, the colors change. Now, life is fast moving, and Ansel Adams would be left in the dust, if you had to cover. But that's not the kind of guy he was. So it's all good. Whatever images that you capture are worthy.
Looks best.
But there's that sort of old world discipline of watching, waiting,
Yeah, it's interesting to think if any of the filmmakers or musicians from yesteryear would have made it in today. And I know there's the, you talked about home editing system, and then there's like this glut of movies out here. And the same with music as well. I think there's Press, Pause, Play. I'm probably saying the name of the documentary wrong. But it's about home music editing system, and how now there's just so much music out there. And how do you decipher good from bad anymore? And does it get watered down as a result? So there's that question with filmmaking as well.
It's great though, because it is empowering. The old days, that power was in very few hands. You had to ask them permission to the studios or whatever. The costs have gone way down, until you clear the music, that is, But you can achieve these things, and that's democratizing the process, which I'm totally in favor of. And I think the good, the great, the good, they find their own way up to the surface. Things that are mediocre, you don't have to do anything. They'll just stay there,
It's cool having friends to introduce me to a lot of fun stuff. You get to share what we enjoy, and if I don't like it, I'm like, nah, not really.
She lets them down easy.
Or other times I'd be like, this is interesting. Okay, maybe lyrics, maybe not so much, but musically, what is it about the music that's cool about it? Okay, it's got this. It's got.
Yeah, it's a big river, really. It's all just keeps flowing.
Going past the, first part and trying to think of the part that makes it exciting, or.
Mm-hmm.
And I like having my studio in my bedroom, my music studio in my bedroom.
I told her recently, I said, someday you're going to have a big studio and then your bedroom be separate. She goes, but then how will if I have a dream, what will I do when I wake up?
Right.
Sit down at the keyboard and play the fragment I heard in the dream.
Yeah, so it's maybe, unless you have a portable little keyboard in your room, but this way she goes right to her console.
Straight to it, the Yamaha keyboard or whatever keyboard it is. And
you record it into your iPhone too sometimes, right?
iPhone or Victor Reader.
The melody or whatever.
Yeah, or the chords. I know a lot of the chords and the harmonies and the instrumentation. And the
Yeah.
production. Like in the dream, it's like it sounds like it came out of the album.
Oh, wow.
Complete, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
complete.
Yeah, and you know, that transition between dreams and waking up, people go, I had a great dream last night. I don't remember what happened. You know, you're trying to capture those
Yeah.
things before they fade.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not this world, it's from another world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
And I remember a whole bunch of my dreams. I would make a lot of notes straight when I wake up from that dream, and I'd make a voice note of what it was like, the dialogue. I remember a whole bunch of dialogue from dreams. And I even talk different in dreams too, like,
Oh, wow.
hey, Grandpa, my voice sounds like this because I'm dreaming.
You are weird.
Yeah. Or I would have these dreams that I would be singing and my voice would be really, really powerful. It would be totally different from my soft singing voice. Like in the dream, I would sing in this unusual sound. Like, how did I get that sound in these dreams?
Lorenzo, when someone meets someone, as you did with Rachel at, I want to say sour grapes. Sorry, it's squash grapes.
Ooh, that'd be
Sorry, it's squash
One of
grapes.
my teachers at Braille say smashing grapes.
It's a really cool name. I remember when you
Yeah.
showed the picture, and I thought,
yeah,
that's a
well,
really
if you're
clever
ever
name.
up there,
Squash
it's
grapes,
the neat little
smashing
club
grapes,
up there.
It looked
sour
A
cool.
lot of people from LA.
So forgive me to the club owner.
Something
They're
grapes.
watching. Yes. So squash grapes. Let's suppose they have a moment that where they meet someone incredible and they say, you know what, I want to be part of that life story. I want to show the world this life story. What are like maybe 5 questions that filmmaker should ask themselves before they embark on something? Because it is a big commitment, and you are getting involved in someone's life. You know, you're showing them to the world, and that's a big commitment. And you know, you've done so beautifully. So what are some questions a filmmaker should ask?
Well, it's a good one. I don't know. I feel like Rachel now trying to interpret these. Well, I mean, it's time, you know,
Yeah.
what you're doing, what's most important for the moment, and you know you're in for a long experience if you've done this before. Or you enter it completely naive and you learn. You know, it's not a weekend shoot, you know. It could have been done, but it wouldn't have the depth, you know. What the thing that I always liked about this experience, it was about a little, use the word girl, but a little person in a little house in a little town. And then she's heard me say this before, but there's a big story there.
Yeah.
You know, it was looking for the great that exists in the small. With Hollywood always taking the small and trying to make it big, this is the inversion of that, you know. So I don't know, I mean, the question one would ask is time, how am I going to fund this, who's going to help me? Is this just a momentary fascination? I call it I did a lecture for film students up at Brooks, and I couldn't tell them anything they didn't know about cameras and lenses and stuff like that. So I wrote this thing called 10 Phases of Addiction.
Oh,
It was
interesting.
almost like a Narconon lecture, you know.
Sure.
But for video journalists and
Wow.
stuff. Like, you know, there's 30 people in the room. How many people are going to be here in 5 years doing
wow.
this kind of thing?
Uh,
And it won't be 30, I can guarantee you. You know, life will intrude, things will happen. You weren't really meant for that, or whatever, you know. It's hard, though. It's hard to give up and go somewhere else. But that went over well because and it was how it's almost like a junkie in a sense. You know, the story is the drug, you know. And if you have it in you to go all the way for a story that you really believe in, that's essential, you know, to have that clinical connection, a cellular connection with the story. And that should guide you through all kinds of ups and downs, you know. If you have that, you have something to go with. So that would be, you know, something I would ask myself and that others would be wise to ask themselves too.
Well, that's excellent. Do you have that online anywhere? Maybe we could link to it.
No, really, I don't
Okay.
think so, yeah. A lot of people focus on the dark side. I do too in film. This is the lightest, I think, most feel good, for want of a better word, project I've ever done, you know. Because it was a good time in my life, you know. I was mature enough, I think, to sense the goodness that was going on here.
Yeah.
And that in times that are confusing, which is all the time, but now especially,
Yeah.
you need to have an antidote to that.
Yeah.
I don't put too much responsibility on Rachel to change the world,
Yeah.
but it's refreshing to see a family persevering through adversity with this soundtrack going on in the house, you know. And I think people can get a lot just out of that experience.
Yeah. I'm happy to have my family too, so.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And my brother, and our kitten Zero.
Aw,
You know, Vaughn didn't want to be in the movie at all.
I'm glad he was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
That
took a long
interesting part.
time.
Me
It was
too.
like,
Tell him.
Rachel,
He'll-
Rachel,
we'll
Rachel,
watch it.
Rachel.
Rachel this, Rachel that.
You know, he was fed up.
Yeah.
And Jeannie knew that he said, Vaughn, you know, they're almost done. You know, Lorenzo always told us he wants you in it. He said, no. Something happened. She called me one day and said, Vaughn wants to be in it.
Oh,
I
great.
said, is this April 1st or something? I don't believe it. Something changed. He woke up. He grew up.
Yeah.
And that interview, which you liked, we like it a lot too.
Yeah.
The bonus features, we gave him another little 5-minute sequence.
Oh,
so
okay.
you haven't seen that. I'm keeping that as a surprise. He talks dirt about you guys. You know? No, but
You've heard it here first.
He reiterates what, you know, he had to go his own way, and people say,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're Rachel's brother. What instrument do you play?"
Oh yeah.
He
Yeah,
goes,
yeah.
I don't
yeah,
play
yeah,
any
yeah.
instrument, although
Yeah.
he does. He has musical abilities, but
Little guitar.
yeah, he has a little.
Got that for a
guitar.
Christmas present.
Yeah, but he's a terrific artist.
Yeah,
And
He
we saw
loves to
it.
draw.
he's out of the fantasy realm.
Mhm.
And I think he
Excellent.
could have himself a career in gaming and all kinds of things. You
Yeah,
know,
bright.
Fun stuff.
graphic novels and stuff.
Very
But
smart.
when the time came to film that sequence, he got a haircut. And
He was ready.
his room, he had that skeleton in there with
I
a
noticed,
a
yeah.
lower shirt on.
It's like Beetlejuice or something.
And before I could ask him any of the questions, you know, I had my sheet like he answered everything
Yeah.
without me asking. I mean, I asked one question. He says, if anybody tried to bother Rachel, what would you do? He says, I'll beat him up. He says, it's my job to bother her, no one else. So, but he was great, and then we
Yeah.
just cut it together, and it was honest.
Yeah.
And I think the film would be less without him.
Yeah.
And then when you see him at the end, you know, that little scene where they hug each other at the very end,
Yeah.
because he's not in it much. He's in the supermarket shots where they're shopping. He talks about his mom.
Yeah.
It's just, I'd like there to be more, but it's at least that's there. And because he is
Yeah.
reserved and he doesn't really want to be part of anybody else's scene.
Yeah.
But he loves Rachel, he loves his mom, and
Yeah.
it's a great family.
Me too.
That's why I like the scene. That's it. It was honest. You
Yeah.
know, whatever the feelings are around it, it was honest, and I thought
His
that
thing?
really, yeah, I thought
Yeah.
it really lent to the film. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what you try for, you know, is not getting in your own way. You know, this is, you know, Michael Moore does his thing, you know, where he's very much the presence in it, and that works great for him. And others are more reserved and non-present, you know, what we would call direct cinema, you know, where you're not getting in anywhere between the audience and the subject by putting yourself in, you know. That would be the school that I would be part of, you know, I think, because it would be weird, you know, it'd be like a narrator, which I've never made a film with. I've edited films with narrators. I worked for National Geographic, which is very narrator heavy.
Yeah.
Ken Burns kind of films. They're very clear, but they're not very interesting cinematically. They do the job well, right?
Yeah.
But they lead you along. They tell you what you want.
They
to
tell
know.
you what they're gonna. Yeah.
It's much harder to edit a film that doesn't have that element, because it has to be self-revealing. It has
Based
to-
on what they're saying.
Yeah.
I guess.
So the subjects become the self-narrators. But
Yeah.
we tried not to do too many sit-down interviews, though there were a few we did, but we used most of it as voiceover.
yeah,
And we go to the picture just
In
for
between.
quick reference. You know?
Yeah.
So they are telling their own story, you know.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
yeah. The grocery store and then the bus ride.
Costco.
Yeah.
And
Oh
creating
yeah. The
scenes,
Costco
you know,
scene.
like
Yeah.
Yeah.
her and Dweezil talking at the NAMM
At the
show.
NAMM show.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Arturo Sandoval,
That was fun.
he came up with some stuff. It was, what is music is the balm for the soul.
Bond for
You know,
the
if you have
soul.
music, it keeps your spirit
Spirit
alive. I
alive.
mean,
Yeah.
you can't write that stuff.
Right.
You know? And I said, what are you going to talk about? He goes, I've got it covered.
That
And
was
again,
fun.
Trusting it. Yeah.
Playing with him is so much fun too. So
That was a really
Yeah,
cool scene.
and she had met him a few years before, and I had
Yeah.
met him some years before, and we called him and said, "Can we do a reunion scene of you and Rachel?"
that was
And,
nice.
he said, "You have 1 hour." And he
It's
was
1
busy.
hour.
We did so much in an hour.
Yeah.
The soundtrack album will be coming out soon, and on there is "Body and Soul" that they did together,
That was
wow.
fun.
which I'd forgotten about till we picked that up
Yeah.
for the sound. This is
Played on the
gorgeous.
Bosendorfer piano, which was originally Oscar Peterson's piano, I guess.
Yeah, he owns Oscar Peterson's 9-foot.
Bosendorfer Imperial. Huge.
Rachel looked like a tiny person in this huge thing.
I love the sound of huge pianos.
And then this scene of you and your mom walking through downtown LA, I think it was. That was really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Because it was so different from Ventura with the beach,
Yeah.
just maybe a safer feel, more inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And then just walking down the street, and I enjoyed that contrast.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was the day we filmed at the Blue Whale, which is
Right.
the club downtown where she played
Taylor.
with Taylor's trio.
His
Taylor
band.
Ice-T, yeah.
That
There's a
was
lot of
nice.
memories there. In 53 days, and we didn't use everything we shot. Some things didn't measure up visually for me. The location sucked or something like that. It wasn't quite worthy. This is for real. This ain't posed. Sometimes Rachel needs a hug and she gets it.
I like hugs.
Yeah. So you happy with the interview? They did a pretty good job, didn't they?
Yeah, it's fun.
Didn't ask dumb questions like I did when we started. There's a bunch of videos coming out over the next few weeks that we decided to release little pieces, like Rachel playing the national anthem. You can see that on our Facebook page. And
That was fun.
we just released one on a pipe organ, pictures in an exhibition, a classical piece,
Oh, that's beautiful.
and a few more coming. So we're just kind of showing people little pieces. We're going to release the Night in Tunisia piece
That'll
with
be
you and
fun.
Arturo. Yeah.
Yeah.